Hi, 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 and hey, hey, Beatle fans. Welcome to another edition of Talk More Talk. And right now, I just want to say how thankful we are that we're actually on the air live. We've had some technical problems the last 20 minutes or so. We want to thank all of our fans, all of our viewers for sticking with us all this time. And this is the first time this has happened. Every now and then, there might be a glitch or a technical problem, but thanks for sticking with us all this time. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm one of the 5 regular co-hosts of the show. Our show, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast, is all about the solo careers of the Beatles. We do this each and every Monday night. No, not every Monday night. Every other Monday night, and at 9 o'clock. And we talk about the solo careers of the Beatles, their music, their history, whatever we feel like. Once in a while, we even slip in conversation about the group. Right now, I would like to introduce to all of you, my esteemed colleagues here on the show. First of all, she is the queen of all Beatles media, but realistically, she's the queen of everything. And she is the author of Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours through the Beatles' lesser-known works. Also, Michael Jackson FAQ, and that's our very own Kit O'Toole. Good evening to you, Kit.
Good evening to you, Ken, and good evening to all of you, and thanks to everybody for hanging in there. Boy, Zoom and Facebook don't always like to play nicely together, so that's what we learned tonight. But everything is set now, so thank you all for hanging in there with us.
Yeah, it's part of the thrill of doing live broadcasting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Also on the show, we have Joe Mayo. You know Joe for his own video YouTube channel, covers music, entertainment, TV, film, whatever he feels like. Just did a wonderful show a few weeks ago on his top 26 favorite solo McCartney albums. You should check out. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Hi, Ken. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Also, we have one of the co-hosts of a solo Paul McCartney podcast called Two Legs, along with Danny Nichols. And the show's getting better and better with every single week when I watch. And that's our own Tom Hunyadi. Hi, Tom.
Hey, how you doing, Ken? Good to see you guys. We got the Kens back together. We got Mayo. We got the Queen. We are set to go.
That's right. We are in solid state here tonight.
Oh.
Speaking of solid state.
Oh, that's right. Ken is saying, when are we going to stop the corny stuff here? We are happy to welcome back a man who's written so many Beatle books, and he's always working on several at the same time. We can't keep up with him, but he's written a couple of books on George Martin, Maximum Volume, and also not Solid State, Sound Pictures, that's right. Solid State, he wrote recently on the Abbey Road album. He has a book on John Lennon coming out pretty soon. Let's welcome back to the show, Ken Womack. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Ken. Thank you very much. It's good to be here with my Ken counterpart.
You can't
Will
beat
they
the
be
world of
agreeing
Ken.
soon?
Will they be what?
Will they be agreeing with tonight's topic?
Oh, it's possible. You never know with Ken. He might be playing some mind games with us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Anyway, just want to say before we start the show, we had planned on having Chip Manninger and Mark Easter as our guests. They are the authors of the incredible solo Beatle book, chronology, discography, everything through the year 2000, called 8 Arms to Hold You. But they had to cancel for tonight. But we are going to have them on the show sometime soon. So, don't worry, they will be here. It's the perfect show for them. It's the ultimate solo Beatle book, which covers everything that the solo Beatles did through the first 3 decades. Tom's holding it up right there. So, yeah, Chip and Mark will be here in a future show. And tonight, we're going to be talking about this particular album, released in 1973, the greatest year in Beatle history. Partly
Plus
because
I was born.
That's right. That's the biggest reason. Yes, you were born.
In solo Beatle history.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, to me, it might be Beatle history. But we'll talk about the Mind Games album, what our thoughts are about it, what our favorite songs are, how it ranks amongst the albums in John's catalog.
And we want to hear from you too.
That's
I
right.
want to hear your favorites.
Please write in with your comments. But as always, we have a bunch of Beatle news to get to. And then we'll go right into Mind Games. First of all, according to the Nielsen Music Mid-Year Report, the Beatles and the Korean pop band BTS are the only two acts to sell 1 million album units so far in 2020. Half a
Wait,
century.
who was the other band? I'm sorry. Who was the other band?
BTS.
Who?
BTS.
Sorry.
I'll admit it. Half your collection behind you is them.
Yeah.
It's all covered
Other,
up. You just can't
other
see-
albums are going to go on my frames next.
Well, let's see. The Beatles sold almost 1.1 million album equivalent units. They had the 5th best-selling vinyl album, with Abbey Road selling 54,000 copies, and the Beatles
Nice.
also performed extremely well on streaming services, with many songs racking up hundreds of millions of plays,
Nice.
which is beyond amazing. You know, for a band that hasn't been together for 50 plus years, you know, they're the biggest band going right now. Also, on July the 17th, we saw the premiere of the remastered video for Beautiful Night, along with the release of the EP for the song, which recreates the original 1997 maxi single with a 1995 demo for the song, an alternate run-through recording, an Ubu Jubu Part 5, a medley of Beautiful Night themed chat, alternate mixes, and interview recordings of Paul and Ringo speaking about the song. And of course, the big box set for Flaming Pie officially comes out this Friday. As we noticed,
Oh,
Ken
boy.
already has it. How many
Can you
times
lift
is
it?
that way?
Oh my.
That's the big.
That's the big kahuna right
Yeah.
there.
Is
As you
that
can
the-
see, you could probably fit Ken Womack in the box.
That is probably the heaviest box set of all the archival box sets, I would guess. Am I right?
Imagine.
And no suitcase handle.
All right.
Amazing
well, that's
box. I mean, it definitely puts things in perspective with the cost. I mean, that, you know, and then, you know, with, grab it right here. This is, you know, this is just the regular size box set right here. And then that's covering half of his body, you know, so it kind of puts things in perspective, you know, so pretty
It
amazing.
does.
Have you had time to dig into it yet, Ken, or did you just get it, or?
I have listened to the whole shebang,
Mhm.
but I honestly, I listened to the streams that were provided for me.
Hmm.
I can't lift this. You know,
Yeah.
Well, we are hoping in our next show, provided we all get the box set in time, that we'll be doing our review, which is what we're planning 2 weeks
Yes.
from today.
Yes.
So it all depends upon the mail service and when it gets to us, but hopefully we'll have several days to digest this
God,
mammoth
look at the size of that.
thing.
Look at that.
It's gonna take a week or two just to open that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll bet many of our viewers are a bit envious of you, Ken. Well, more news here about Flaming Pie. Good.
the herniated discs I have are not to be envied.
Yeah.
The knees, Ken, the knees.
Yep.
Oh, damn it.
Don't you know that? That's how to exercise.
One viewer writes, "Thank God, Ken, Paul can eat."
Yeah, that box set will buy a lot of veggies.
Mhm.
Very good.
Also concerning Flaming Pie, Paul's website has been making a few recordings available for download, including the early 1986 version of Beautiful Night, which is part of the Ubu Jubu Part 5 bonus track. Only from what I understand, what they have on the website is in its entirety, and it's not that way on the Ubu Jubu segment.
Okay.
So I've been told. And some days has been made available on the website without the orchestration.
Right.
And that won't be in the box set.
Which I find very annoying.
Yes, very
dishing out
much
all
so.
this money that though all those songs should be there.
Hmm. Yeah,
Agreed.
well, at least it's free. You know, you could just download it. Yeah.
By the
Free
way,
just like air.
this entire video podcast has been made it worthwhile every time Ken says "ubu jubu." It's a thing of beauty.
Yep.
Come on, Ken.
I might be saying it quite frequently in our Flaming Pie show.
Yes. So get ready.
Also, upon the passing of civil rights leader John Lewis, Paul McCartney issued a statement online. He said, "Sad to hear the news that civil rights legend John Lewis died yesterday. He was such a great leader who fought with honesty and bravery for civil rights in America. Long may his memory remain in our hearts. How about renaming the famous Pettus Bridge that he and Martin Luther King Jr. and others walked across in the 60s for the civil rights movement, and rename it the John Lewis Bridge? Nancy and I are proud to support the NAACP and have recently donated to their legal defense fund." Very nice from Paul McCartney to issue that statement right after John Lewis's passing. On July the 13th, Australian TV broadcast footage from the Beatles' 1964 concert at Melbourne's Festival Hall. The special was called "One Night Only, The Beatles in Oz." Now, the Beatles performed 3 nights in a row at this venue, each night giving 2 concerts. This special was from the last show on that last night, June 17th, 1964. And on July 1st that year, in 64, this concert was broadcast on Australia's Channel 9. And the special was called "The Beatles Sing for Shell," because the Shell Oil Company sponsored that broadcast. On this original broadcast, the one that just aired, on the original broadcast, the Beatles performed 9 out of 10 songs, leaving out "This Boy." But on the special that they just aired, the footage was remastered, including short clips of the opening acts for the show, and then 7 songs the Beatles did that night. So it was missing 2 songs from the original broadcast, 3 in total. Unfortunately, there's some narration talking over the beginning of "I Saw Her Standing There," and the narration for this special gets in the way a few times. But the picture quality, I have to say, is excellent. There are a lot of close-up shots of the Beatles, and you really get to hear the vocals and their harmony parts. Currently, this happens to be on YouTube. I can't say how long it will remain there. Just look up the Beatles live at the Festival Hall, Melbourne, Australia, HD. Okay, any of you guys see this yet?
Oh, yes, and you get
Not
to
yet.
see John do "You Can't Do That," which I always like that version.
Yeah, okay. It's really good. I love the close-up shots. They're so clear of them on stage, and just hearing the vocals so clear. That was a real treat. The New York City company called Theater Within, who every year since John Lennon's passing has put on Lennon tribute concerts around the December 8th anniversary, will start their acoustic Lennon mini concert series with some of their favorite artists performing a 4-song set of John Lennon or mostly John Lennon penned Beatles songs. And that begins this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, when the group The Kennedys will do their Lennon set. You can go to theaterwithin.org, theater with R-E at the end, theaterwithin.org to watch these mini concerts. Next Monday night, Access TV. This is on August the 3rd, Monday night. They will have a music special called At Home and Social with Nuno Betancourt and Friends. Betancourt first gained attention as the lead guitarist in the band Extreme, and he'll be joined by an impressive roster of friends and artists, including Julian Lennon, who together with Nuno will perform Radiohead's song Karma Police.
Nice.
Interesting.
Other artists on the special include Nancy Wilson from Heart, Steve Vai, and a surprise appearance from Brian May.
Well, it's not a surprise anymore.
Pretend I didn't say it then. Okay.
Ubu jubu.
And with special thanks to one of our listeners, Tom Brennan, we learned on July 15th that Michael Lanning, a former member of the Dark Horse Records band Jiva, performed an acoustic guitar 5-song music set on his Facebook page. 3 of the songs came from Jiva's Dark Horse album. The songs were Something's Going On Inside, comma, LA. Then Hey Brother and Love is a Treasure. When asked if the Harrison estate was going to reissue Jiva's Dark Horse album, Michael said, they've done nothing to reissue them, the Jiva songs. It really is rather frustrating. I've reached out to them several times, and I mean Linda Arias and Olivia, to no avail. Okay, some people follow the Dark Horse artists, just like the Apple artists here on this show. My camera's moving as we speak. I'll have to move to adjust to it.
Anything can happen tonight live.
That's right. All bets are off.
Boo boo boo.
This is it. It all comes down to that radio series when you get there. A set list from the Beatles has turned up online. Dated January 17th, 1963. The list includes 19 songs planned, with 3 of them left empty, as if they hadn't decided yet which songs to fill. Interesting list, as George Harrison has many lead vocals, and Paul has just a few. One interesting song mentioned is Hey Good Lookin', sung by George. This is for their performance at the Majestic Ballroom in Birkenhead. Now, while it's not new news, it is news that you might not even be aware of for something that happened this year. There is a band from Italy. They're called Pinguini Tattici Nucleari, which translated means tactical nuclear penguins. And they released a song this year, which was called Ringo Starr, which they performed early this year at the San Remo Festival, obviously before the pandemic hit. And the song proved to be extremely popular in Italy, enough to become a #3 hit over there. All the words are sung in Italian except for the name Ringo Starr. So if we have anyone that knows Italian, I'd love the translation. Feed it to us if you can. You can check out the song on YouTube. There's an official video for the song. Pinguini Tattici Nucleari.
You know, I've been told, don't know how true this is, that Italy has the most Beatles covers groups from anywhere in the country.
That's interesting. How do you even look that up? How would you know?
Exactly.
Can you Google that?
Oh, man.
Also, thanks to Dylan Seavey, your friend there, Tom, who helps you out with 2 Legs. There's a
Yes,
brand new
my boy.
cover. Yes. There's a cover version of the Wing song Arrow Through Me from
Yes.
Emoni Wilkins, which you should check out on YouTube. She does a great job on that.
Fun video as well.
Mhm.
It is. Yep.
All right. We have 3 major passings of note to talk about. First is Regis Philbin, who of course was a mainstay on American television for decades with his talk shows with Kathy Lee Gifford and Kelly Ripa, and Regis dating back to his years on the Joey Bishop show, where he was his sidekick. Regis had Ringo on his show with Kathy Lee on July 3rd, 1998, to promote his latest album at the time, which was Vertical Man. And Regis reminded Ringo that he interviewed him back in 1964 for one of the shows Regis was involved in for Westinghouse.
Wow.
Ringo didn't remember it.
Oh, wow.
Regis
You
died.
don't say.
Regis passed away last Friday. That was 1 month shy of turning 89. Then there's Peter Green, co-founder of the legendary Fleetwood Mac, a great guitar player known for the band's early hits like Oh Well, having written Black Magic Woman, which of course was a big hit for Santana. And there was a song that was a big influence on the Beatles, called Albatross. Now this was an instrumental that came out in November of 1968, and it was a #1 hit in the UK. And Peter wrote the song. George Harrison once said that the Beatles borrowed that very dreamy sound on the record, very ethereal, and they used it on their recording of Sun King. So if you've never heard Albatross, and I played these back to back on my show, every little thing.
It broke my heart. I heard it recently, and I mean, not before this happened, and I'm like, oh, the day I heard that, I'm like, oh, there goes Sun King.
Well, Mr. I heard it tonight about 2 hours ago. We were in a kind of natural food store about half a mile from here, all masked up, of course, and there it was playing on the
Wow.
air. It was
Oh,
beautiful
wow.
to hear.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That is nice
Very
to
nice.
hear in a place like that. You wouldn't expect it,
Mhm.
you know, especially because it was a, you know, a hit over in the UK and not a hit here.
Cool.
Yeah. And also there is a Fleetwood Mac Beatles connection because of Jenny Boyd, Patty's sister. She was married to Mick Fleetwood. So for a time, George Harrison was Mick Fleetwood's brother-in-law.
Those must have been some interesting holiday dinners.
And lately we saw Olivia with right
Ex-
on the Ringo.
Exactly, we
Yes, we
did
did.
With
That's
Yeah.
right.
Fleetwood. That was
Yeah,
kind
I
of
forgot
interesting.
about that.
Yeah.
talk about a ubu jubu.
Yeah. So Peter Green died on Saturday and he was 73. And then finally, I still can't believe I'm saying this, Emmett Rhodes. Before we talk about Emmett, I just want to let everyone know how I discovered his music. After I started my Beatles show on college radio, the first station where I got my big break was at WDHA in New Jersey, where it ran from 1983 to 1993. And I always had thematic sets for the last hour of the show. And I came upon this idea to do Beatlesque music, meaning artists, whether they're solo artists or bands, where you could hear a Beatles influence, aside from the obvious, like Badfinger and the Raspberries and ELO. And I asked my listeners to send me tapes of artists that they felt you can definitely hear a Beatles influence. And I got a decent amount of then cassette tapes. And quite a few of them had Emmett Rhodes on those tapes. So I really discovered his music through my listeners. Also, to be fair about it, around that time, Beatle Fan Magazine did an article on Beatlesque music. It might have been because of that I came up with this idea. I'm not quite sure. It was a long time ago. But anyway, I got to hear Emmett Rhodes' music and I was so impressed. And then I tried to look for his albums, which were out of print. So I bought them used.
Yeah.
And I got very hooked on the Emmett Rhodes album, his first real solo album from 1970, which looks like this.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. And what can I say about him? He was really an extremely talented guy. There was a lot of talk about him because when he put out this solo album, he had been in previous bands before, but when he put out this album in December of 1970, many of the songs sounded like Paul McCartney, very McCartney-esque, melodically, arrangement-wise, what he played on the piano, the guitar playing. A lot of it was something you could hear Paul put into his music. To be fair, not all of his music was like that. It was quite different. It's not like you'd automatically say he was, a McCartney sound-alike. You have to really study all of his music. But he also played all the instruments on that album. And in fact, the two albums that followed on ABC Dunhill. And so there were constant comparisons made. His album did really well. It actually went as far as number 29, which is a decent showing for an artist's first album. He got a lot of attention, got airplay in college radio. I didn't know anything about him, like I said, until I started doing my radio show.
Right.
But he released 3 albums on ABC Dunhill, and then after that, nobody heard from him. And that was part of the fascination, the mystery, whatever happened to Emmett Rhodes. And what eventually happened was, well, he did work in the music industry at Elektra Records as a producer. He also put out a few singles in 2010 that got removed quickly off the market. And in 2016, he released what was his final album, which was produced by a guy named Chris Price, who's a really great singer-songwriter, puts out a lot of very melodic pop. And, anyone who studied Emmett Rhodes, and he has a very loyal, hardcore following, will say what a talent this guy was, and he really should have been bigger than he was. And so I'd like to know amongst the rest of you, how many of you have listened to his music and are familiar with it?
I discovered Emmett from the 2001 movie The Royal Tenenbaums. They used the song Lullaby. So after that, I then found a used copy of that album, the Emmett Rhodes album that you showed. Was never able to find the rest of his material, and I really enjoyed it. You know, looking back at it now, yes, musically he's very McCartney, but you know, listening to it, earlier today, and then after spending a lot of time with the McGear album, he sounds a lot like Mike McGear in my opinion. If you listen to songs like "Leave It," and then you listen to songs, a few of the songs from Emmett Road, there's some similarities there. So but I really enjoy his stuff. I enjoy that sound. I'm not always a big fan of musicians that are Beatle-esque or McCartney-esque or anything like that, but his lyrics really hit me, and I'm definitely gonna try to seek out his other albums. Probably have to listen to it on YouTube until I can find used copies, but it's very impressive stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. I don't think it was his intention to be McCartney-esque. I think that's just,
Right.
the songs that he was writing at the time. And it just so happens that he put out this album where he played all the instruments the same year that Paul put out his first album playing all the instruments. So there were constant comparisons made. Ken, you're familiar with his work, right?
I am, and I think it's impossible not to say that he's McCartney-esque. He's not derivative, though, which is what's very interesting about him. He's not, there's so many sort of British invasion sound-alikes that we hear, even in incidental music, right, for television and film. It's kind of profuse, but he is not a sound-alike, even though he does very clearly have similarities to Paul's voice, even songwriting style and performance. All of those things are true, but he transcends that comparison. His songs stand alone, particularly on the one album that you referenced, I think, as being quite good and quite unique. And we're going to be talking about the early 1970s, of course, in just a few moments. And I think it's not surprising that a lot of folks who were very talented were unable to eclipse that period. The competition was so fierce, when you look back at it, not just with the solo Beatles or the Beatles, whom they were competing with for a time during that period, their own band, but the competition was absolutely fierce, particularly in the singer-songwriter marketplace.
Yes. Yep.
But it's still, as you said, there's a kind of mystique to his story because he all but disappears after having such incredible promise and not half-baked promise either. I hope our listeners will go to their favorite streaming platform after our show and check him out. He really is worth it. And I was turned on to him about 25, 30 years ago by a physicist who said, who also from New Jersey, who said, you've got to hear this guy. So for all we know, Ken, he probably heard him on your show.
It's possible. I'd be honored if he did. By the way, a little bit of his history. He had some bad luck with his record company, with ABC Dunhill. He signed a contract, which I believe was really his friend, who was kind of like his manager, who ran his publishing, told him to sign a contract which amounted to 6 albums in 3 years, which is really tough to do. It's one thing if you're the Beatles and you've got 3 songwriters in your band and you've got a great producer and a lot of really good engineers to work with, and you can also cover songs in the early part of your career. Emmett Rhodes did everything himself. He wrote all the songs himself, he played all the instruments himself, and he was a perfectionist. And it was really difficult for him to do this. They wanted an album every 6 months. So I think that because his albums didn't sell very well and he had a problem with ABC Dunhill, who sued him, I don't really know what the outcome was of the lawsuit, but I don't think he ever fully recovered from that. And that's kind of why he dropped out of sight, in the public eye. Kit, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I had heard of Emmett Rhodes over the years, and shame on me, I hadn't really delved into his catalog, and so over the weekend I listened to his debut, and as I said, shame on me, because what what a wonderful record that is. You know, you can really tell what a special talent he was, and I hate to use this cliche, but he was clearly a musician's musician, a singer's singer. You know, that he obviously had that respect among his peers, and I was just blown away by this album. And yes, and Ken, just as you said, he's definitely McCartney-esque. I mean, his melodies and even his singing style, absolutely, but not derivative. I mean, that is so important to distinguish, because yeah, he's not just copying Paul. I mean, he had his own sound, his own kind of lyricism. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I definitely plan on looking into his other albums. And it's just a shame that he had those fights with his record company, that he couldn't have put out more albums.
Yeah.
Well,
Joe,
let's underscore that for a moment. What a strange contract, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's almost interesting in itself to understand why someone would create a deal like that. And perhaps it was just because of the obvious promise that Emmett had.
Wasn't it really a rare thing, though? I mean, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, they were putting out 2 albums a year for the first couple of years. Elton John was releasing 2 albums a year for the first couple of years. So I don't think it was like a real rare thing.
No, but what's different among all of these? Emmett Rhodes is not any of those artists. And,
one guy.
Yeah,
and it could have been, purely a matter of the extraordinary promise that he had. That someone would extend a deal like that to him. You are right; it was a different business for sure. But wow, that's I'd love to know more about that. And you know what? I'm glad you brought him up tonight, Ken, because while he was obviously influenced and motivated by some love for the Beatles at some level, Emmett Rhodes has, since I had that moment with the physicist so many years ago, he feels like he's part of the solo Beatles story. So I'm glad you mentioned him on Talk More Talk. Because he is in a way.
Yeah. I often wonder why he wasn't bigger, more successful. And it either comes down to lack of promotion from the record company. And sometimes, as much as I hate to admit it, whenever you're compared to the Beatles or one of the Beatles, it's like the kiss of death, because nothing can ever live up to that. So I don't know if that was a factor, because at the time, I didn't know anything about Emmett Rhodes. I don't know what was said other than what I read about him and read about him since. So, yeah. And by the way, the album that was made in 2016, Rainbow Ends, had a lot of people who were big admirers of him on the record. Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles. And in the Bangles, she covered the song Live, which was a song that Emmett did in his previous band, the Merry-Go-Round. And Amy Mann's on it. A few guys from Jellyfish are on it. And Chris Price, like I said, did a really good job producing that album. It's really sad. It's one of the tragic stories, one of the many in the music industry. I just want to make mention of a couple of things here. If you're interested in learning more about Emmett, there's a wonderful interview that took place in January of 2010, and it was on the radio station WFMU in New Jersey. It was done by Michael Shelley, who is still there at the radio station, and it runs a little less than an hour, and Emmett is just very forthcoming. He tells you a lot about his life, all the problems that he had, and it's sometimes kind of rough to listen to, kind of warning you about that. But if you can, check it out, because it's on YouTube, okay? It's an interview with Emmett on WFMU. And another thing, there's so many things you can find on YouTube, but the Merry-Go-Round, the band that he was in, was actually on The Dating Game. I'm not kidding. They performed as a 4-piece unit. They did a medley of their songs, and then 3 of the 4 of them were actually contestants. They were bachelors, and Emmett Rhodes is one of them. You can check that out too. That's also on YouTube. So a lot of stuff you can find on YouTube, especially on The Dating Game, with people who became famous later on, who were just getting famous at the time. Like
that's
Steve Martin was
Oh yeah.
was a
Oh yes,
bachelor.
I've seen
So,
that. Yeah. Oh, too funny.
so that's it for the news for now. Before we talk about mind games, we have a few things we have to say about the virtual fest for Beatle fans. And Kit, you want to take it away?
Sure. Just quickly, the yes, as I'm sure many of you have heard, of course the Fest for Beatles fans that was to take place in Chicago and Rosemont specifically had to be canceled this year because of the pandemic. But they are having a virtual fest instead. It's going to be 7th through the 9th, and it's going to be, of course, all on Zoom and somewhat similar to the last time back in March, but much bigger. I mean, much bigger. They're going to have a lot of guests, Mary Wilson, Mark Lewison, Donovan,
Right.
Lawrence Juber. Ken Womack down here, and many, many more. And so it's going to be really quite a weekend, and we are going to be there. We are going to have a panel. We don't know what day or time yet. They're still working out the schedule. And also a lot of your other favorite shows will be there. Two Legs, Things We Said Today. It's going to be quite the event. So you can go to the Fest for Beatles fans Facebook page and find out all the information. It's $44 for all 3 days. That gets you into all the events, and it's as I said, going to be quite the weekend. I know, not as good as in person. We all are going to miss that. Hopefully next year everything will be back to normal. But this year, this is the next best thing. So we hope to see you all over the August 7th through the 9th. We've got a really great panel planned, and so we really look forward to it. Just keep an eye on our Facebook page. Hopefully, we'll have details very soon as to the precise date and time of our panel.
Yeah, we'll all be sharing it on our Facebook pages.
You bet.
And there's so many guests like the ones you mentioned, but I just want to mention Frida Kelly as well, Peter Asher, Jeremy Clyde. Did I say Steve Holly?
Yep.
Yeah.
Steve
Okay.
Holly,
So
right?
there's a lot of really great people. Billy J. Kramer. So yeah, action packed for that weekend.
For sure.
All right, so let's get to our main conversation, which is all about John's Mind Games album, which came out in the United States on October 29th of 1973, November 16th in the UK, peaked at number 9, wouldn't you just know it,
Of course.
on the US charts, number 13 in the UK. This album was recorded at Record Plant Studios in New York City in the summer of 1973. It actually was recorded at the start of John and Yoko's marital problems, and right
around the same time she was recording
Filling the Space.
Yep.
That's right. At the same time, John also had his immigration battles with the U.S. government. This was the follow-up to the politically charged Sometime in New York City album, which came out in June of 1972. Mind Games was recorded in July and August and mixed in a 2-week period. Some of the musicians on the album included Jim Keltner, David Spinoza, Gordon Edwards, Ken Asher, Arthur Jenkins, and Michael Brecker. And so let's just start by asking all four of you, in all these years, what your thoughts are on this album. Is it a favorite of yours amongst John's? And how would you also rate it amongst his other albums? Let's just talk about some of the songs that you like most of all from the album. And let's start with you, Ken.
Sure. Well, I alluded to how I think about this record earlier. It's such a complicated period. The competition was enormous. You yourself have said that it's one of the greatest years, 1973, for Beatles solo work. It is. It's a particularly Ringo, obviously it's his finest hour in a lot of ways. McCartney has that amazing, beginnings of a serious comeback that he begins with Red Rose Speedway and cements at the end of the year. George is still flying high. It's a wonderful period, and of course, you also have the Beatles with the Red and the Blue albums, which are just eating up a lot of units during that period, and the singer-songwriter movements in still in high sunset. It's wonderful. You also have that great '70s rock sound being churned out by many artists. So it's a challenging, very competitive year. I don't think it's John Lennon's best album by any stretch. It's not his worst, and it's many steps forward after some time in New York City. The important political and cultural arguments he makes on that record, and Yoko makes on that record, notwithstanding, it's a big step up. I think it's both of those records though pale in comparison to, say, Imagine or Plastic Ono Band. This is a great flowering period of output for John. Walls and Bridges is just around the corner, and some of the sort of the flaws that we'll hear on Mind Games are sort of polished away as he brings home that record. For many years, I simply loved the title track, which is a great tune, right? By any measure. But for me now, it's Bring On the Lucy. I just adore that song, and I adore the lyrics, which are John being playful but serious. The musicianship is just pure fun.
Okay.
Even though he's being very serious about serious political topics, it's just one of those songs that when I hear it, it makes me happy, and I think of that period and of him. And you can almost hear and see that band in the studio when you listen to that track. It just has a kind of whimsy to it, even though, again, he is thinking deeply about peace, his own situation, obviously with the immigration fight, which has just been turned up several notches since the Nixon re-election. So the album, it's there are a lot of gems on it, but it's not perfect. But you know what? That's okay. Right? I mean, Imagine is a beautiful record and a superior record, but it still has I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, even though it has a wonderful metaphor and meaning to it. It's hard to call that a classic. So at times, the solo Beatles suffer from their own profundity, right? I mean, they have a lot of material. It was George Harrison said it so well in the anthology. There's just all of these songs, and we gotta get out all of the songs.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And it's John is he's trying to do that. He's trying to churn them out, and it's he and McCartney are these kinds of unstoppable forces during this period. Harrison too. They're just not working together to deliver those goods. But I love Bring On the Lucy. Free to people now, Ken. Free to people.
Well, what were the flaws since you brought that up with Mind Games? Because eventually I'll tell you my feelings about it, which are very different from yours. But
right, and I'm not panning this record by any means. I bought it as soon as I had saved up enough allowance to own it. So and have never had any regrets. It has just to speak generally, it has this, at times it feels very produced, and at other times it feels raw. And so what it ends up having, if we think of an album as a text, as a collection, right? And I know that let's face it, in 2020, not everybody sees the album as a collection. They're really vehicles for a series of songs for some artists. But I think it's safe to say among the five of us that we see albums as collections. Kit can tell you from her graduate work that a text is any coherent set of signs. And what?
I'm getting bad flashbacks, Ken.
Yeah. Don't worry. Put on some more lipstick. It'll be okay. Jubu kitten. So the issue for me with Mind Games is the issue for a lot of the solo Beatles records during this period, they don't have that kind of current, that kind of coherency, that flow from beginning to end that, frankly, we became spoiled with by the Beatles, who were able to imagine, these incredible sequences and the manner in which one great song would comment on the previous great song, right? I mean, Brian Wilson said it after he heard Rubber Soul, wow, there's no filler. So it does have the feeling of not being as coherent as some of his other records. But I think when we look back on that in 2020, I don't know how bad a thing it is. I mean, not every record is going to be Dark Side of the Moon, which has, to my mind, incredible coherency, right? And it's very sustained structure. But, any record that has 4 or 5 great songs is worth my allowance.
Okay, well,
1973.
in my opinion, this album definitely does have 4 or 5 great songs, probably even more than that. But when you're used to hearing an album over and over again, and you're used to the sequencing, you can, accept the flow of it. I don't really see a lack of consistency in this album, but I'll talk about that more when we get to me. How about you, Tom?
Thanks, Ken. Well, I kind of agree with Womack a little bit about the flow of it, but I mean, I can forgive that. Excuse me. I discovered this. I heard most of the tracks on that 4 CD John Lennon box set that came out back in 1990, I believe it was. So it wasn't until 2002 when this was released when I got the feel for the whole album. And even though there's some complaints about this, which I get it, that's fine. But
what
that's
complaints?
when I really just the way it was mixed.
Oh, the mix. Okay.
Yeah, the mix.
But I heard good things about that mix.
Yeah, but there's complaints too. But that's neither here nor there. But for me, I really enjoy this album. I don't see, I know a lot of people consider this like a middle of the road John lyrically, but musically, I think this is one of his best albums. He's got some great musicians on this album, like Keltner, Spinoza, Gordon Edwards. I wasn't really familiar with that name. Listen to that bass throughout that whole album. My God,
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Especially on I Know.
Yes. And
really
then
accents that song.
Yes. And I've said many times on this show that I'm a big fan of the pedal steel guitar, and Sneaky Pete plays some amazing steel pedal guitar on this album throughout, which I'll point out when I get to some of the songs that I like. But I never thought of it as an album really, because maybe I just came into it later than maybe some of you did, and I didn't get to follow that. I listened to these albums differently than a lot of people did, because I didn't do it in order. I mean, I didn't hear Plastic Ono Band first. I didn't hear Imagine next. It was all mixed up. And plus, being a box set guy back then, that's how I was listening to a lot of my music, was just the box sets where it was just compilations of songs, not necessarily all in order at that either. So, but being that, I'm glad that I finally did get this 2002 remix and remaster. Hold on one second. Looks like I
your camera.
We've lost
Yep.
it.
We can hear you.
Oh well. Anyways, this is what happened to me last night. Anyways, but as long as you can hear me, that's fine.
Yep, we can hear you. You're back.
You're back.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to point out that Lennon produced this by himself for the first time. This is so I think you can imagine there might be some inconsistencies with this album, just because he's on his own. He might be more than what he might be biting off more than what he can chew, especially what you pointed out, Womack, with a lot of things that he's going on with his personal life. But there's a lot of Johns on this album. You get like a reflective John with Out of the Blue. You get like an apologetic John with Asu Masan. Yeah, thank you. You get a positive John with Mind Games, or Positive Outlook. You get a dependent John with One Day at a Time. With that song, you kind of get a sense of how dependent he was with Yoko. You get rocker John too with Meat City and Tight Ass. So you just there's a lot there to consume with this record. like I said, mind games, tight as, one day at a time. I love the cuz lines, because I'm the fish and you're the sea, because I'm the apple, you're the tree. Yeah, with that, you get a sense that he was really dependent on Yoko. For me, anyways, that's what I read into it. And he's losing her. And it's another thing about this album. Not Ringo, but Yoko's stamp is all over this, and especially on the cover, you kind of see John walking away from Yoko. And I Know is another beautiful song where if you listen into the background, you get a nice country feel to that. You Are Here, again, a Yoko connection with that. And if you listen to that on headphones, and especially this 2002 mix, the work from Spinoza and Sneaky Pete on that mix is absolutely beautiful, especially during the solo part of that song where they're just trading licks back and forth. Amazing.
Which song?
You Are Here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So and Meat City, I think, is just a great rocker, great way to end the album, and fun. Out of the blue, just a quick story. My wife and I, we lived in Chicago at the time. We were on the beach. This was before we were married, and we were looking for our first dance song. So, I've played her a couple of songs, and then out of the blue, no pun intended, I played her the song Out the Blue, and she said, perfect. And I was just put a big smile on my face. So that song ended up being our first dance song at our wedding. So I'm forever grateful for that. But yeah, I find it hard to really find a lot wrong with this album. And I think it's really good. I would probably put this, in the middle of the road. I mean, obviously, Imagine, Plastic Ono Band, you have to put those 1 and 2. But I can see this as a Rubber Soul Revolver type albums with this and Walls and Bridges.
Okay.
So I would kind of almost put those two back to back for sure.
Very good points. And I like the fact that, and we could bring this up occasionally on the show, that, how you start out listening to the Beatles or any artist, if you start out with a compilation, the way that you view the album later on when you hear it in its full context could be very different. And not everybody has to listen in chronological order to someone's catalog.
Well, I do now, and knowing what I know, whenever I discover a new artist, I have to start at the beginning. I have to get that, that complete. I have to know exactly how it was for the first album, second, and so on and so on. So from that, I mean, I have become that for sure. Okay.
But your impression of an artist's music can be very different. Just like there are some fans who were brought up on the Beatles first on their solo music,
right?
Got to know that really well, and their impression of the group might be different.
Exactly. 100%.
So.
Well, and imagine right now, it's one of my favorite things to even think about is that, during the course of this conversation, hundreds, perhaps more than 1,000 people across the world have discovered the Beatles for the very first time, and they've had that moment when they realize, where has this music been all my life? Ubu Jubu, right? It's this incredible moment of realization, and of course, we're simultaneously happy for them and a little jealous because we can't listen to them for the first time. But they're going to have exactly the issue you just described, Ken, where context is everything. They discovered the White Album first, as opposed to having this chronological experience. And I'm actually not saying that one is better than the other, but context does matter.
But it's kind of interesting. I sort of wish in a perfect world, when we're exposed to music for the first time, like in this case, if it's the Beatles and their solo catalog, you wouldn't be exposed to the whole narrative of their history and to know how the world views this music and what their best work is. And you just go into it with an open mind, completely fresh, without hearing, the history and the backstory of certain albums. Just go right into the music. What do you think of it? It's hard to do that, but it would be nice if we all could listen to music that way.
Yeah, I would say, however, going back and learning a lot of the backstories, for me, some of that has helped my appreciation on albums more, especially with an album like Wildlife. You hear that story, and for me, I've come to appreciate that more because I know the backstory.
Right.
And I like Wildlife, so I can't apologize for it. I like the the homespun, you
Yeah.
know, organic kind
Absolutely.
of rock.
So do I.
But that context point is very important, you know, and that's what we've lost when we lose the idea of the album. Because in a
Good point.
world of Apple Music, for example, or platforms like Spotify, we're going right for the hits, right? And if
Hmm.
you go to the listing and you look up, you know, any artist, pick the Beatles, right? What are the first 20 songs going to be? They're going to be, you
Hits.
know, they're going to be classics, right?
Yep.
And what you lose then is that ability to kind of fall in love with a track here and there, you know, like Ken was saying. I mean, you lose that ability to just happen upon something. I mean, what you just said, actually, Tom, is fabulous, right? Your first dance was to a song that we would never have been able to pick. In fact, I don't know if we could poll the world, and it would be a long time before anybody came up with that. But look at what a special place that holds for you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the song is from 1973, their best year.
Exactly.
Kit, your thoughts about Mind Games?
Well, you know, I mean, it's true that it's the same with me. I did not, you know, get to listen to John Lennon's albums in chronological order. So, I mean, I was listening to them completely out of order. And, you know, I came into this album just on the strength of the song Mind Games. I mean, that was the first one I'd ever heard, first song from it. And, you know, at first listen, you know, this was not one of my favorite albums. I did not connect to this immediately, but over the years, I've grown more appreciative of it. And Tom and Ken, as you were talking about, for me, the context did help me appreciate the album, you know, as I learned more and more over time of, you know, where John was at this point in his life in 1973. I think for me, anyway, that was crucial for me to in really understanding the album, that in a way, the fact that it is in a way, you know, inconsistent. I mean, in a way that does reflect his life at the time. I mean, he was dealing with so much going on. You know, the fight to stay in America, his marriage was starting to come apart. You know, becoming disenchanted with, you know, the more radical politics he was dealing with the fallout of some, you know, sometime in New York City that, you know, was critically savage. I mean, he was really, you know, dealing with things from all different. So in a way, it's not surprising that he would be, you know, have these songs that are dealing with all different kind of emotions. That being said, it's still, I wouldn't rank it as my favorite. I would probably agree with, you know, with you, Tom, that and maybe you too, Ken, that sort of mid-level. I mean, I still, you know, I'd still rank Imagine, Plastic Ono Band, and maybe even, you know, I'm a Walls and Bridges big gal. You know, I love Walls and Bridges, so I'd still probably rank that above this. But as I said, I've really grown to like it. Intuition, I think, is a really great song, although I wish he hadn't buried the sax at the end, you know, in the mix. Michael Brecker, you get Michael Brecker on sax and, and you bury it at the end. Or, oh, no. But yes, you know, as you were saying, Gordon Edwards, I mean, he's a star
Right.
on this album.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
I mean, the bass on, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. I've always loved Meat City and Tight As. I mean, they're just fun. I know that the lyrics aren't anything deep, but they're just, I love that kind of loose and messy kind of sound. It's just pure rock. Absolutely love it. And the song Mind Games. I've just always, it's kind of a sentimental favorite for me because it's, as I said, it's one of, maybe even one of the first John solo songs I heard on the radio. You know, and you know, Out of the Blue. You know, you mentioned that. That is a beautiful song.
I think it's one of the best ballads of all four. I mean, for me, it's like a top five ballad between all four of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's just as good as Woman. You know, I mean, in terms of sentiment, I mean, that is just gorgeous. So there are some some real gems on here. And then there were just, a few, One Day at a Time does not do it for me. That's probably the song I like the least on here. That just,
maybe you weren't crazy about John's falsetto voice throughout the whole song. Maybe
that's part of it, and the background singers. It's
Something Different, I think they were called.
Yeah, Something Different. Yes,
it was something different.
It was something different, and that really didn't work for me. But of course, what could top the Utopian International Anthem? I mean, nothing.
It's flawless.
That's
nothing. What I'm doing here. That's my performance tonight. I'm doing Utopian National Anthem. That's why I haven't said anything for about an hour. I'm looking at the clock. I'm doing the Utopian National Anthem.
That's your interpretation. But so overall, yes, it's not it has its flaws, it has its inconsistencies. But as I said, over time, I've learned to appreciate it more, and particularly, as I said, when you consider the context, and the point where he was in his life, I think it really carries more meaning for me now. I think I appreciate it much more. And his voice, he was in great voice too.
I agree. Really good vocals here on this album as well.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. Thank you, Kit. Joe?
Well, I think a lot of this is going to be rehash until we get to Ken Michaels, probably.
I don't know.
Why would you think that? Come on.
No, I know how you feel, and I know how you feel about the album. For me, it's an overlooked album. I think it gets lost in the shuffle. I've overlooked it myself. I think that's because Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, such great works, superior works, arguably. And also, I'm a fan, like Kid, of Walls and Bridges a lot. So for me, it happens to fall, Mind Games does, number 4 of John's album. I consider it kind of a mid-tier album as well. I don't think that it's really among his best overall. But I wanted to mention, Tom brought up the 2002 CD. When the 2002 CD was out and it was remixed, there were a lot of people I'd heard anyway, people I've spoken to on my channel who watched my talk about the album and stuff, said they came to appreciate the album more through that 2002 remix. Some of them who were kind of lukewarm on it. And I think that's because John's voice was more up front. He always liked to bury his voice a lot, and he didn't like the sound of his voice. Always put those kind of effects on it. In a way, you could argue, well, that wasn't his intention, But some people I've talked to actually liked it better that way. And I think it's a revelation. I always recommend it. If you're not really that wild about the Mind Games album, give the 2002 CD a shot if you can find it, But talking about some of the songs, the title track, Mind Games, loved it in '73 when I was a kid, love it now. It's one of my all-time favorite John songs, period, of all time. I always get a buzz, a lot of it nostalgia too when I hear it on the radio. I love that. Now, we talked a little about Tight As. I also like the dirtiness of it, kind of risqueness of it, in a way, another meaning to it, that kind of thing. And I love Dave Spinoza, the guitar on it. John always was talking about how he was trying to do reggae on that, trying to teach musicians in '73 what reggae was, So that's interesting. But a track that I want to bring up that not many people really think much of is, I'm going to try to say it, Aisume Sen, which means I'm sorry in Japanese. A slow track, one of those kind of just draggy, arguably, tracks. But it's so emotionally charged and touching, an apology to Yoko. I mean, you can hear and feel the sincere pleading in his voice. I just think it's fantastic from the gut. And at the end, we talk about the guitar work here, Aisume Spinoza. It's like a gut-piercing solo at the end. I love that elongated solo. That's my favorite part of the whole song, is the ending of that song. Love the way the guitar sounds on there. I'm a fan of Bring On the Lucy, as Ken Womack mentioned. It's a fun song, political, charged, maybe a bit cliched by this particular time. Maybe John's treading old familiar ground in a way, but hey, it's a real riot. It's a good time. So it's one of my favorite songs on the album. And I want to mention something else about Intuition, which I think Kit brought up first.
Yeah.
I like the upbeat, happy, jovial feel to it. Happy-go-lucky John in a way. You know,
Yeah.
somebody once said he sounds like a lounge singer. I remember I would talk to him and say, "Hey, all right," at the beginning. Hey, all right. You know, I'm like, I don't know, but I mean, isn't it unusual for John really to be optimistic? Because he has lines in there that I love, such as I play the game of life, I try to make it better each and every day.
Yeah.
And stuff like, when I'm deep down and out and lose communication with nothing left to say, it's then I realize it's only a condition of seeing things that way. So different in a way.
Get a
from
lot of
stuff that
different
we-
hats from John in this on this album.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
for
John
sure.
himself said, you know, it lacks like a vision, or, you know, no certain vision. You know, artists are sometimes their own worst critics, right? Putting their own stuff down like
Oh.
that.
Hmm.
You bet.
Every
But he
now
do-
and then, John is positive. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, which is
I'm thinking of
refreshing.
watching the wheels. You know, I tell
And
him
I'll
there's
tell-
no
I'll tell you a
problem,
little
there's only solutions. You know.
Yeah, right. That was a very positive line. I'll tell you a story a little bit. When John was taken from us on December 8th, I don't know why, I just remember this so clearly. I didn't cry right away, maybe kind of shocked, you know, like we all were. And I just remember looking at a Beatles calendar, so I know what date it was. It was January 11th of 81. I was playing my music, and I played Intuition. And that is what got me finally to release it. The emotions and the tears. And I think it was because, I don't know, maybe because he was just trying to sound so positive, make each day the best you can and stuff, and look what happened. So that's kind of an association I have when I hear that song.
Yeah.
What can we say about Out the Blue?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted
Thank
to say,
you.
folks,
Yeah,
I know Ken's thinking it. He's thinking
Thank you for
Out
saying
the
it
Blue.
correctly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not out of the blue.
Yeah, that's a George song, isn't it?
That's
Yep.
true. From all things
So-
must pass.
No, but it's,
Was
I
it-
mean,
was it
I'm
instrumental?
just being
Yeah.
a nitpicker with that, but it's a gorgeous ballad. I love it. All my life has been a long, slow knife.
Mm.
I love that line. You know, it's a good lyrics here. And Meat City, you know, another raunchy rocker. It's got that little bit of fun at the end, which is scramble words that
No,
Yeah.
if you play it
Yes.
backwards.
Backwards, yeah.
doesn't mean it too nice. And then the single is different.
Yep.
I think the single, when you play it backwards, says check the album at that little bit. And I'll bring up the fact that, you know, I've always hated, as a lot of fans I'm sure do, any release that's come out on CD always manages to chop off the
Mm.
quiet words at the end where John says, "Why are they doing those strange things?"
Right.
And somewhere along the line, there's always something missing, whether it's one word or two words. I'm like, you missed it again, you know? It just
You know,
gets-
The same thing happened with Ringo when Goodnight Vienna came out, and the No-No song was chopped off at the end. Ringo's ad lib.
yeah, right. The ad lib at the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's really talked about Only People. Not one of the best tracks on the album, but I enjoy it. I especially like some of the Lost Lennon tape stuff. I've heard of that too, by the way. It was interesting. Have it more raw and primitive without a lot of the stuff added later, you know. So I just went on speaking pretty highly of a lot of the songs. The
Yeah.
only reason for me is, I think it falls short of the other albums, you know, that he's most famous for in his solo career, the big ones, Imagine, Plastic Ono Band, and so on. I do think it was a step up from Sometime in New York City, as Ken Womack said. Although I do enjoy Sometime in New York City too, for what it is. But something just misses a little bit. It's just, to me, a mid-level album. Although certainly not a bad album at all, and a darn good album. Just not his best, in my opinion.
I
Great.
find it hard to understand how anyone could say it's a mid-level album, and yet you like almost every single song on it.
Well,
I do.
So-
you got to say that in a way, in context, because you're asking us to rank it. So I'm only
Context.
saying it in that context. I'm not saying that it's
Yeah.
a bad or a mid-level album in an album sense. I'm just saying that because that's where you want us. You said to rank it, so I'm saying it's mid-level, as in, you know, not above Plastic Ono Band or Imagine, but not below, you know, Sometime in New York City either. So that's my definition of mid-level. Is in a ranking style.
That's all I
Yeah.
mean by it. I just mean on its own, fine, but when
Sure.
thinking about everything together, kind of middle of
Right.
tier.
And again, you know, the beauty and the failure of our experiment with this show, and I don't mean this as a criticism, it's just a fact, and it's a fact of all of these wonderful records we'd get to talk about. When you have an embarrassment of riches, and
Yeah.
as Tom just said, you begin to try to make sense of them and rank them. You know, there are some will rise to the top. That never means, right, that we could imagine a world, or would want to imagine a world, where any of these don't exist.
Right.
Right. I mean, particularly when you're talking about John, and especially, who is a confessional artist, who typically lays bare some of his feelings in this very vexed time, as everyone has pointed out already in his life. You know, you're going to get what he gives at that particular moment, because that is what he's able to share.
Right.
And, you know, that's the beauty and the pain of loving his music. Yeah, one song on here that is central to me, in addition to some of the others we talked about, is You Are Here, but not because of this version. It's central to me because of, I'm sure you guys know about this, and if you don't, I urge you and our listeners to do some sleuthing. There's that remix mashup record called Everyday Chemistry, which is such a wonderful title, by the way, and it's all about solo Beatles being mashed together. And the reason it's interesting is because Everyday Chemistry is a misnomer, isn't it? There's no such thing as having everyday chemistry. The chemistry the Beatles had doesn't happen every day. But the best track for me on that, and it's widely available on the internet, is called Over the Ocean. And it's from a line from You Are Here. And it is the most delicate, beautiful use of that lyric. The middle eight for the song is I Dig Love.
Yes.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
It's absolute, and they've merged McCartney and Lennon, the fellow who produced this, counting down to start the song. And it is just essential listening. It is a beautiful, beautiful work, and it reminds us, when I hear it, and I sometimes play it over and over again. I put it on repeat, right? Because it just it just makes me happy, because you hear this beauty that's there, roiling, right? In their careers all the time, and you bring it together, and suddenly all those beautiful songs like I Dig Love and You Are Here, and McCartney's Heather, right, is his contribution.
Wow.
Ringo's maybe some of Back Off Boogaloo, I think, but it doesn't matter. When you bring them all together, they sort of transcend. They're more than the sum of their parts. And I urge you and the listeners to check that out. It's just beautiful.
All right. I gotta
Well,
do
to
that.
me, the beauty of mashups is how certain songs work well together.
Yeah.
That most of our brains wouldn't think of putting together. You have to have a mind for that. But I love the songs, you know, individually, mainly. And, you know, my view of Mind Games is somewhat different from the four of yours, because I think it's a consistently strong album throughout pretty much the whole thing. The only song I've ever had a problem with, and it's only a slight problem, is Only People. Only People sounds a bit forced to me. I mean, there are certain songs that we like to categorize as slogan rock, like Power to the People, even, you know, Bring On the Lucy, you know, in a way. Only People tries to be a hit record, you know, it tries to be commercial. It is commercial, and it does work to some degree, but it just doesn't.
I heard it as a commercial not too long ago.
Yeah, that's actually true. It was used in a commercial.
Yeah,
So, but for some reason, it
but I
just,
hear you.
yeah, it doesn't work as well for me as the other songs that fall in that category. But yeah, this was a time and place in John's life where he noticed how Sometime in New York City didn't do very well. It was the biggest bomb, really, of all the solo albums. So he had to go in a different direction. And he also had his problems with immigration. So he wasn't going to get super political at this time. So in a way, he kind of reverted back to like Imagine Part Two. Some of the same formulas that were in Imagine are in Mind Games. But the songs themselves, which is what matters most of all to me, are strong. You know, Mind Games to me, the title track is one of the best singles that any of the Beatles put out in their solo careers. It's a great song. I love the production. Production doesn't mean as much to me as the quality of the song, but in this case, the production really enhanced the song. And it is kind of Phil Spector-ish,
Oh yeah,
which
and
is odd.
For
it has
sure.
a slow build to it. It's magnificent in the way it kind of shimmers, but
Hmm.
this it's almost a bolero-like tension that it has because by the end of it, a lot of those sounds are coming together. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting track.
It's kind of interesting that here he is moving away from Phil Spector, you know, and yet the
Yeah,
title track
yeah,
is in his style in a way.
For sure.
Um,
yeah.
And yet
you
they're
know,
not done with each other.
And that should have been a bigger hit. I'm sorry. I mean, come
Yeah.
on. Was it
yes, it
number
was
18 or something in the States?
18. Yeah, and
Holy mackerel.
I've also got to admit I'm a big sucker for love songs and ballads. And whereas John's had great love songs throughout all of his albums, really, um, you got more on this album that I think are really powerful. I mean, to me, Out the Blue, like we've said, is among the best of all of his love songs. And I'm glad to see that that song is getting the recognition over the years recently that I think it deserves. I Know is in the same category for me. You Are Here is beautiful. I love the whole sentiment of wherever you are, you're in my heart. And I feel the same way about I See Sen. I See Sen, I'm glad you said what you did, Joe, about the guitar playing from David Spinoza.
Yeah.
He's one of the earliest interviews I've ever had in doing Beatles shows, and he did that guitar solo in one take. You know, what he brought to that song is kind of similar to what we discussed what Dave Gilmour brought to No More Lonely Nights. It
Lonely Nights,
really
right.
makes the song shine. You know, I
Good
love I
comparison.
See Sen. It's a great, slow, bluesy number. I love John's voice to death on that. I do like One Day at a Time because of the lyrics. It just flows like poetry. I'm kind of used to the fact that he sang it in falsetto. You know, that never happened before where it's all falsetto on a John song. And there is the version that's on the anthology, the John Lennon anthology, where he's singing it in his regular voice too. I love Tight As. It's a great rocker, rockabilly-ish. Intuition, I think, might have worked as a single. You know, it does have commerciality to it. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it would have been a #1 hit, maybe not even top 10, but it would have kept the momentum going on the album.
Yeah, it's
This
funny
is
you
a-
say that because I was just going to ask you after you're finished. You know, there was only one single for this album. Is there another hit on this album? But go ahead and finish, Ken.
Well, I mean, as much as I love Out the Blue, and I think it's such an amazing song, I don't know if that would have worked chart-wise as a single. I probably hear Intuition as a single. And yeah, Bring On the Lucy is a great track. You know, song per song, every song here really, I think, is extremely good. So to me, it's not like I automatically think Plastic Ono Band and Imagine are his best albums. I know John has said that. I know Plastic Ono Band is regarded artistically that way. I'm not always in the mood to listen to it because it's a rough album at times.
True.
Imagine is
Definitely.
Imagine is far more commercial an album, and you know, I love Imagine. I've grown to love I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, Ken. The only
Me
song that
too. Me
Yes,
too.
me three. Me three.
for
I
years
love
it
that
was like the
song.
only song from John's solo catalog that I didn't care for, and now I like it because of its looseness, you know, and you know, the spontaneity of it all. You don't really find that, you know, in John's solo music. So it's
But
different in that regard.
you know, you've said the word many times already. The context of 1971 and that song, which, you know, whether I care for it or not, is very important. You know,
Yeah.
the world is torn over foreign wars, right?
Mm.
And the song has poignance You know,
Yeah.
whether, you know, and the same thing is true, even though it is not effective, certainly not commercially effective. Sometime in New York City came from an authentic place.
Right.
Yep.
You know,
True.
it came from an authentic place, and I think that that's very important. And you know, all of these records exist inside of this really, really beautiful tapestry. You know, that is more than the sum of its parts.
For sure.
And
Well,
you know, going back to the point earlier, I think I agree. Mind Games should have been a #1 hit, but what a year! I mean, it was a tough year. The
mhm.
competition in the 1970s, or even when Double Fantasy comes out 40 years ago this fall, right, is enormous. You've got 5 or 6 genres going to war with each
Yeah.
other.
Mm.
Disco, new wave, punk, you know, country crossover is becoming a
Yes.
thing, you know.
Yep.
So, and here he is trying to do his standard sort of work. It sounded vanilla to some critics at the time. That doesn't mean it is vanilla, but
And plus the
Adult
fact that
contemporary,
they're,
perhaps.
yeah.
it's
That's
Plus
what I
still
love about the 70s so much is that
yeah,
musically it was all over the place.
it
Yeah.
was. I
Singles
mean,
charts.
right. I mean, at one point, what the Star Wars Cantina theme
Yeah.
was up at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
In the same, so which I love. I love that
Mm.
there was this rich world of music. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about the competition, but it's very impressive that they still managed to turn out 4 #1 hits in that year.
yeah,
You
sure.
know,
It's true.
it's still very impressive.
Amazing. Yep. That's true.
Yeah,
So, but overall, I think this is an excellent album, and I often say it's my favorite of John's solo albums. And maybe
Wow.
it's because to some
Wow.
degree I tend to drift towards the lesser known stuff because it doesn't get played as much, maybe. But I just think that consistently, song per song, with the possible exception of Only People, I just love the songs on this album and I love the ballads a lot. I just think it's really strong. And I think it is the most underrated, the most overlooked of all of John's solo catalog, and one that everyone should spend more time paying attention to and giving it a chance if they haven't
I would agree
already.
with that.
Yeah.
I would definitely say it's an album that it's one of those that it takes more than one listen to get into. I would definitely say that it's an album that you need to spend time with. You know,
Well,
it certainly was the case for me.
well, for me, every album takes more than one listen to get
Well,
into
of course, but
you
I
know?
mean, you know, it's not
Yeah.
one that you might like. I mean, there's some albums I've listened to where I just immediately connect with them. I mean,
Mhm.
just
Oh, yeah.
immediately, you know, I mean, like when Flowers in the Dirt first came out, I was like, this is great. You know, I
Mhm.
love this album.
Right.
But then there will be ones like this where yeah, it takes a while, you know, to grow on me. You know,
I'm still waiting for Driving Rain to connect.
Me too. Me too. There's a good example. That one still hasn't connected with me, but most of them, they either connect with me instantly
Right,
or
right.
it takes a while. You know, I have to kind of live with it for a while and it grows on me. And this is one of those albums.
But you know, sometimes when it takes some time before an album connects, when it does connect, the rewards are just wonderful.
True. Very
And
true.
that's why it is very textual, right? I mean,
Mhm.
albums, when they're created in the fashion of the ones that we're talking about right now, they're like reading. You know, they pay dividends by rereading again.
Mm.
The finest books do. You'll see things or hear things in this case that you hadn't heard before. A guitar solo,
Right.
the way
True.
he uses his voice.
Right.
Or, you know, when you start to study it as, you know, as all those new Beatles fans that have occurred tonight will one day do, they will find new dividends in the fact that he was able to create anything at that point.
That's for sure.
Good point. Good point.
In
Yep.
1973, much less several, you know, keepers
Yep.
as it goes. So
It is amazing that a few of these individuals, you know, Paul at certain times, George at certain times, John at certain times, that they were, you know, they faced a lot of, you know, personal demons or whatnot, and they were able to, you know, create not necessarily masterpieces, but quality music. And that stems from the back to the Beatles days. I mean, look what they were going through in '69, you know, and they were able to create, you know, Abbey Road.
Right, and it's
Yeah.
that interesting, thanks for that, Tom, because it's that very interesting mergence of two things, right? Incredible talent,
Mhm.
otherworldly talent, you know.
Right.
my late friend Dick Karam used to say that when we talk about the Beatles, he'd say, "I'm sick of hearing the line that the Beatles reshaped popular music. People haven't understood them yet." He used to say, so, which I always thought was kind of smart. So they have incredible talent on the one hand, but the other part that really makes that emergence so special is drive, right? John Lennon would have gotten a pass from anybody in 1973 at that point in his life if he didn't put out another record.
Yeah.
You know, that wouldn't have been a problem, but he was driven to do it. And it's that drive that makes them so fascinating, because they worked so hard. Walter Everett, in one of his great Beatles as musician books, charts out one year, and it's 1967, I think. I may be misremembering this, and they're not even touring anymore at that point. The sheer amount of work they were doing every day is staggering, and it's such a great lesson for anybody who wants to look to them for, you know, powerful, life-affirming aspects. There it is. Amazing talent, and saying, "Damn it, I'm going to do something with it." They were just such a splendid emergence of those things.
And the beauty of it all is that the well never ran dry. They still kept putting out great stuff.
Incredible.
You know?
Great.
All right. I guess that'll wrap things up for our conversation about mind games. Why don't we each give our fans our contact information and let them know what we're all doing. We'll start with you, Joe.
You can go over to my YouTube channel, Me and Mr. Mayo, and watch my Beatles-related videos and other stuff. And that's me done in lickety-split fashion.
Well, you have a new video. You have a new video up, which I haven't had a chance to see yet, about your new Beatles finds.
Yeah, congratulations finding the Let It Be box set.
Yeah, second time I got it. I explained it in the video.
Okay, very good. Tom?
Yeah, well, you know, Ken, as you once said, you know, once you get started, it's never going to stop. And my wife will agree with you on that, because it's never stopping. Two Legs and Talk More Talk are going nonstop. Real quick, Two Legs, our last two shows, we interviewed Ian Peel for the unknown Paul McCartney, which was a fascinating interview. And last week we had our Dan Ely on. Now, if you don't know who Dan Ely is, in 1974, he got to penetrate the Paul McCartney and Wings camp while they were staying at Junior Putman's farm. Got to stay there for 3 weeks, got to witness and record lots of material, amazing stories. He befriended Jeff Britton, befriended Denny Lane. Amazing stories throughout that whole interview. So check that out. Myself, Andy Nichols. You can find us on YouTube channel at Paul McCartney, or I'm sorry, Two Legs at Paul McCartney Podcast. Please check that out. Please subscribe. And Podbean, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. So yeah, a lot going on. A lot of interesting shows coming up, and our 100th show is coming up real soon too. So
hey, will I be the 100th show when I appearing on it?
No, you'll be 4. Joe's going to do an off the ground show with us here pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to that.
Great.
Okay. I'm going to need to stop doing my Beatle work so I can have time to watch all of Tom's shows on Two Legs. There's so many that I want to watch. You know, he's got great discussions there and so many interesting topics that, you know, the guy who was there during the Juniors Forum sessions, you know, it's like, it's amazing. All right, Ken, how about you?
I have a new book coming out called John Lennon 1980, The Last Days in the Life. I'm really proud of it, and has some previously unpublished photographs, but more importantly, it really puts that great comeback into a new kind of context, one that isn't about a guy being assassinated, but a guy finding himself, as I think we want for all of ourselves and our families, in the nick of time, right? And it was a powerful experience to spend some really close days reading and thinking about that period.
Yeah, and that's coming out around John's birthday?
It will be out in the United States on September 15th and in the UK on October 8th.
Okay.
I
look
will be
forward to
buying
that
it
very much, Ken.
Okay.
And
Kit?
I think we'll be talking about that on this show. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
There's a chance.
I think
It's looking good.
I think we're going to be able to book an interview with the author. I think that's a safe bet.
I didn't fully answer your question, Ken. So on a personal level, I've also started a really serious weightlifting routine with the Flaming Pie box set. And,
Okay.
while it is, as people have noted, the price tag, getting yourself in good physical shape with anaerobic exercise is priceless. So
Okay.
Can I ask you a real quick question, Ken? The box set that you showed earlier, in your mind, is it worth the cost?
I don't. That's a tough question, and that is a very, as we just discussed, our individual experiences with mind games. It's an individual choice. It is beautifully rendered. I love having access to all of those demos and outtakes, etc. But it depends on your interest in. It's wonderful for collectors, certainly. It is absolutely beautifully wrought. It's something to behold. If you enjoy the artistry of the making of those kinds of projects and products and celebrating them in that way, and I think Flaming Pie deserves to be celebrated, then it's probably a good choice for you. But if you're a person who likes to live in a sort of Thoreauvian place where you're very simplified, and all you've got is your pack on your back and all your MP3s and your computer, then it's not, it won't do anything for you. But it is a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
We'll talk more about Flaming Pie on our next show.
Hopefully next episode.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing that will help you with good anaerobic exercise.
Paul thought about that ahead of time where you were concerned, Ken. He was thinking of you.
That's a man who has taken hold of his health over the years.
That's true.
As has Ringo.
Oh,
Okay.
Rocky.
Kid.
Well, you can check out good friends of our show, When They Was Fab, Ed Shen and Lonnie Pena, both episodes of a show that I appeared on where we talked about Ringo's big birthday show. They're both up. We had a lot of fun going through what great fun that show was and some of the more interesting moments and so forth. So you can find that on my Facebook page. I did my monthly show since we were last on, and that's also on my Facebook page, my monthly live show, that's up there. And also I am going to be well, tomorrow as you're watching this, but if you're listening to this or watching the replay, you'll be able to find it on my Facebook page. I'll be back on Plastic EP's show. Our pal from Australia, I just found this out before we went on air. It'll be tomorrow, July 28th at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's live. I never know what the heck's going to happen when I'm on that show, so tune in and find out. Usually a lot of just fun, Beatle-y conversation and always a good time. And before I forget, if you want to reach us here at Talk More Talk, you can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Talk More Talk 1. Of course, you can find us on our Facebook page, and you can find us on our YouTube page. Please subscribe. And you can find us, if you just want to listen to the audio version, you can find us on Podbean and virtually any other podcasting platform you can think of. iTunes, Spotify, you name it. So for iHeartRadio, everything. So please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everybody you know, and subscribe to us. And as always, we appreciate all your support, and please send us ideas of topics you would like to see on future shows.
Oh, definitely.
We appreciate everything you do for the show, Kit.
Oh, thank you. Even with the glitches tonight.
All hail the Queen.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
And by the way, Plastic EP, for anyone that doesn't know, I think this guy does not sleep.
Nope.
He is on Facebook Live 24 hours a day interviewing people. He's incredible. He has this most amazing energy. I did a show with him. We all have, I think. Maybe not Ken. Maybe.
Have you? Oh,
really?
oh,
Okay.
you have to. You have to.
Well, Yeah.
You guys have
I
to.
hear a lot
Well,
of good things.
I'll be making an announcement on the next show about guesting on shows, but that's next time. So.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All right.
As for me, I did an interview recently with Sam Wiles for his Paul McCartney solo podcast called Paul or Nothing, and we were discussing Flowers in the Dirt. That show is now up on the Podbean website. Just type in Paul or Nothing. It's the name of the show, and had a great time with him. He's hilarious, Sam. He has a very unique sense of humor. You got to have that British sense of humor in your show. Got to mix that in every now and then. Also, I did a couple of interviews. I think I discussed this on our last show with Dave Morrell. Dave is a Beatle fan extraordinaire, a big collector who spent his career as a promo man at different record companies. And in the 80s, he worked for Capitol Records. What a dream, a Beatle fan to work at Capitol Records and to promote Paul's records and John's records. We did a show here on Menlove Avenue. He was responsible to promote Menlove Avenue. So it's covered in his book, his latest book called Run Out Groove, Inside Capitol's 1980s Hits and Stiffs. He's put out his autobiography in volumes. This is the last of them, volume 4, and it's all about what he went through in the 80s. So I did an interview with him for myself, for my website at kenmichaelsradio.com, on my interviews page 4 page, and also on my other podcast show, Things We Said Today. And even though it's 2 interviews with the same guy, it's a lot of different questions in both interviews. If you want to hear more about Press to Play and Flowers in the Dirt and the Beatles albums of the 80s, like Real Music and Rarities and 20 Greatest Hits, we go into that, and a lot of talk about just what it's like to work with radio, you know, from a radio person like myself, talking to a guy that worked with radio stations all the time throughout his entire career. And it's a lot of fun talking with Dave. Speaking of Things We Said Today, the most recent show was with Dave Morrell. It's on our Podbean site, the Podbean page, and it's also on YouTube. We're recording a show Wednesday, which will probably go up Thursday, a brand new show. And on my website, kenmichaelsradio.com, on my Beatles trivia and games page, I mentioned this last time, now I have it to show you, An Accidental Studio.
Yay.
That's the new documentary on George Harrison's handmade films.
I just got the email from Amazon saying they just shipped it. So looking forward to it.
Oh, I can't wait.
And I've got the Blu-ray to give away on my website, as well as the movie That'll Be the Day with David Essex and Ringo, and the ebook of 8 Days a Week from Chip Manninger and Mark Easter, who, like I said, we hope to have fairly soon coming back to our show.
Again,
right.
And talking about workouts, not as big as Ken's box set, but this is still a workout as well.
Yes, it is.
When Ken's feeling weaker, just lift up that book.
Right.
Baby steps. Start with 8 days a week, work your way up to Flaming Pie.
There you go.
All right. So this has been great talking about mind games and all that's going on in the news. And we want to thank all of you for watching tonight. Listen to this button. Very nice. Thank you, Joe.
Very nice.
And
Wrong album.
yeah. Thanks to all of you for watching, and
Absolutely.
also for putting up with our little problem at the very beginning of the broadcast. We hope that doesn't happen again. But hey,
Yep.
this
Hey.
is
Live,
live.
baby. It's live, baby.
That's what comes with the territory.
Yep.
So for Kid O'Toole, Joe Mayo, Ken Womack, and Tom Hunyadi, this is Ken Michaels thanking all of you for watching. And remember, wherever you are here.
Adios.
Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.